And I've already got them once.
Nick does not play around, man. When he is ready to start the show,
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
boom.
Anyway, Mike, what were you saying before we got so rudely interrupted by the show?
I'm sorry, did I interrupt you guys again? I can put you guys off again.
It's all right. It's quite okay.
Yeah, pretty much par for the course for RetroRoots, but go ahead, Mike.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh man.
Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy
everyone.
Memorial Day
Memorial
Monday.
Day to everybody.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody had a good day. Don't forget to thank the soldiers that are out there that are deployed and the ones that are here at home that actually managed to be home for their families. That's got to be a good time for them, especially.
And yep, especially as you think about those who have given their lives for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So we already have questions in here. That's why Atari lost relevance. Okay. Well, I mean, there's at least several videos on my channel about that. But yeah, we'll get into some of that. And is Atari still developing games? More or less publish here and there, not a ton.
I mean, if you talk about their recharged games, yes.
Hi, Carla. So we have
Vash and Sever, Omega.
Yep. We got Vash. Omega Ace managed to make it.
Yeah.
Was Mazen in here a moment ago. I don't know if he's still here. Mazen Power's here.
Yep. Mazen's here. Scepter, Zombie.
Here.
Yugoslav
was in here for a bit. I don't know if he's still here. Zombie was here.
Bone.
Yeah, I saw Bone pop in. Taters is here. So we got a good crowd tonight. I thought we'd start by pretty much catching up with everybody and kind of what you guys have been doing over the last couple of weeks. Mike, you start us off here?
I have been, on topic, I have been playing with my bright, shiny new Atari VCS. I finally figured out how to, oh my God.
You finally figured out your recording issue, right?
I did, and it's gonna suck for when I want to stream with RetroArch. I might yet still have to get some sort of HDCP stripper thing for Windows. It's the dumbest thing. So
there has to be a better way to turn that off inside the instance. I thought it was only happening when you had it booted up in the Windows 10.
It
instance.
does. So
okay.
The Windows 10 has some sort of HDCP that I can't turn off. So if I turn it off at the AverMedia, so I have an AverMedia Live Gamer Ultra for those who don't know. There is a way to turn HDCP protection off on the AverMedia itself, on the capture card. The problem is the Sony receiver that I have, when I turn that off and I boot Windows 10, and only when I boot Windows 10, I have tested this with everything else, including the Atari OS itself, works fine until I boot to Windows. And
why don't you try a Linux instance instead and try loading RetroArch there?
That is an absolute possibility, except I don't know if so. I have all of my RetroArch BIOS and ROMs on OneDrive, so I can use them in multiple places. I am not sure if Linux will connect to that. I don't know.
It'll find it.
Is there there's a OneDrive app for Linux?
You don't necessarily need a OneDrive app for Linux, but you should be able to drop it just on an SD drive, and Linux will find it. It'll mount it anyway.
Okay, because
I've done it. I've done it with the Steam Deck, so it'll work.
All right, because
I load things onto the SD, onto the USB drive on Windows.
Oh, I can
put everything over there, and then I plug that in onto my Steam Deck, and then I can pull everything over.
No, I could certainly do that, but I have this stuff on OneDrive that syncs, so it syncs across my platforms. And
okay.
and that's
Heavyweight
so
says
yeah,
OneDrive Online works well. So
it
there's
does.
Zombie and Bash is back in. We have a couple of new people. Bone was in here and K2's in
Yep.
here.
Welcome.
I think that's the first time he's popped in here, K2
Yeah.
Extreme. So it's good to see you in chat, man.
Yeah, so
Let's
bottom
in here.
Yep. Godlike Taters.
Yes, I saw him. We tied to him earlier.
And yeah, so the bottom line is that the way I got it to work was to take the receiver out of the equation. If I turn off HDCP protection, for whatever reason, my receiver can't figure out the handshake. So it pops in and out and in and out and in and out. I can't figure that out. So I end up taking the Atari VCS directly into the AverMedia, then to the TV, and it works fine. So
I was about to say, why don't you just do that? What do you need it on the receiver?
Because
for your own personal audio.
For my audio, yeah, for the audio.
Well, I mean, you can connect it to the AverMedia, right? Can't you connect headphones to it or something like that? Or just pull the AverMedia source into OBS?
You can, but my receiver also acts as one of my switch boxes because I have my Xbox going in there. I have all of my consoles go into the receiver. Then the receiver goes into the AverMedia, and that way I can record any footage of any console I have, and then the AverMedia goes into the TV. So the receiver acts as both a switch box and an intermediary for the audio.
Okay. I honestly feel like you should just try Linux and try it that way.
It's
just put everything on an external drive and then move it over to the VCS, or just use the external drive.
Yeah,
and just pull everything off of there. And
that's an idea. Fine. That's an idea. I mean, I've got enough room on the I've got enough room on there. I can make a Linux image, and then just pull the games that I want, because not everything I need on it. So that may be the next thing I do, which means I have to learn a little.
A couple of people have some suggestions. I know Heavyweights mentioned that there's an HDMI switch that strips the HDCP, but then it goes into your receiver and it's kind of like it's adding it back in. So I don't know how that works for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's. I think what I'm going to end up doing right now, because I don't do most everything I have is real hardware except Sega 32X and down. So the nights that I want to stream 32X, Sega CD, Genesis, Super NES, anything like that, I'll just go. It'll take me 2 minutes. I'll go pop the thing out, plug it into the AverMedia, put it back.
I've had problems with the HDCP with consoles before, like the PS4 and the PS5.
Yeah, I've never had that.
The PS5, I was able to turn it off.
You can.
It's a little bit buried in the menus, but you can turn it off.
Yep.
And so once you turn it off, it'll connect just fine, and then it'll work like normal.
Yeah, you just don't watch.
I can't remember if I ever found it on the PS4. I know I found it.
It's in the same. It's in the same place. It's in the same menu, and the difference is that you just can't watch.
Well, Mazen, he's talking about the VCS. He got that VCS for like $99 from.
I'm talking about
TV Hasselhoff, and so he's been trying to run RetroRoots and stuff like that through a Windows instance, so that he can stream some retro games on that to his TV,
which works.
And it works, but when he tries to record it or throw it out through OBS, he struggles with it a bit because the HDCP that's on it while it works with his TV, it doesn't want to decode for the AverMedia because it doesn't have any way of decoding the signal. Right. So that's where he's struggling with it a bit.
Yeah, and it's only booting to Windows.
Born Tears for Fears sounded good. We'll get into that in a minute.
Oh. So that's all I've been doing the last couple weeks. And then of course this weekend went to Hershey Park with the family. That's always fun.
Yep. Rob, what'd you do?
This week I've been what have I been doing this week? I even thought about this answer because I knew I was going to get asked.
I always check in with you guys because it's like every other week.
I have been playing a lot of stuff lately. Oh yeah, I've been kind of playing through just because it comes up all the time. I've been playing through Rock Forte. on the
Mega Man and Base. Yeah, that only became
yeah.
a thing because of Jan, and then you decided to do a video on it. And I want to say a couple other people were like doing videos on it too.
Yeah, it's been strangely
Didn't
popular
you go
lately.
do something
I
on
think
it?
that a lot of people were just kind of randomly started playing it this month. It's not a Mega Man shirt born, it's Star Wars. So this is a dark
Trooper.
Dark Trooper. I do have Mega Man shirts though.
I have a Mega Man jersey. That's as much as I remember.
So I did play through it a few times. And
I haven't tried that one past the initial level. I tried it on stream for a little bit. Really did not enjoy that first level at all. I didn't like the layout. I didn't like how it flowed. I didn't like the difficulty level being front loaded like that. And I was just like, this isn't even fun. And went to something else.
Yeah, well, I just kind of powered through that part. So also, I've been diving into the big sale that PS4 has been having. So I was, everyone's been talking about the games that are just rock bottom prices. So I swooped in and got a couple of those. Mainly the new ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove.
Hey,
for like $5-6. I was disappointed because I actually held the physical cartridge in my hand for the Switch, but that time I had not played the Genesis game. So I was like, do I spend $20 on this or get some amiibos? I got amiibos instead. I wish I could go back in time and get the game itself, because if I had played the Genesis version at that time, I absolutely would have bought the sequel. And
that's our dork side did a Mega Man base video as well.
Yeah, so I've recorded a couple playthroughs of Rockman and Forte. So I imagine it actually will end up as an actual proper MrMatthews video, but for now they're just gameplay videos. Let's just say that I practiced the game pretty well.
Yeah, that's one I would have to practice offline so I can kind of push it. But I mean, I kind of took a break from Punch-Out. I was pressing on Punch-Out for quite a while, actually, trying to get a little more consistent. I'm finding there's weird spikes in that I have difficulty with, like Ball Bull on any round, either first time or second time. I seem to have issues. Some of the others, not so much. But it's weird. It's like I'll have a problem with one guy, and then the next two guys are not a problem, and then like Ball Bull pop up again, and all of a sudden it's a problem again. Something about the way he animates is weird for me. So on top of that, I started pushing through the Ghostbusters, the remastered version of the 360 game. I finally finished that one. I was happy to be able to finish that one. So it's kind of some of the stuff. Yeah, Ball Bull, for some reason, it's just hard pattern-wise. I don't know why. Like, once I can get him to start doing his bowl charge, it gets a little easier, but it's getting past that first part that it's kind of a pain in the butt for me. And I don't know why I can't do it more consistently. Like, sometimes I can just, I get the timing down and it's fine, but if my timing ever gets off on it, then I'm in trouble. Then I'm just taking hit after hit after hit. Hey, Sandwich. So I finished those two. I've been kind of taking a break from the channel. I know I've said that on multiple streams. I need to put out a video so more people are aware, because I'm still running and people going, oh, I didn't know you were taking a break. I'm like, I've only said it like 6 times, but okay. So
they just don't want to. They figure, like we all do, if we all say you're not taking a break, or we all don't know you're taking a break, then you're not really taking a break.
Well, here's the problem. I really do need to reorganize things, right? Because I'm doing things too last minute. I need to get some things where they're cleaner. I need to get things where I can do them faster. I also want to add a few nice touches and figure out how I can kind of grow the audience a little bit, because I kind of feel like I'm peaking with the audience I have now, which is great, but I'd like to see people, obviously. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that as well while I'm kind of taking a break and just spitballing ideas of things and kind of writing them down and touching base with random people. Like, and I may post some stuff on the community page too, like, hey, here's some ideas I had, which ones do you like, which ones do you not like, that kind of thing, to see how much of the existing audience I have would be kind of into those. But while I've been kind of taking a break, we just did like tons of things this weekend. I hung out with a buddy of mine on Friday. We went out to dinner and then just did like watched a movie at his place and a few drinks. And then Saturday we did a grill out for the weekend. Sunday we went to a concert. I went to see Garbage and Tears for Fears. We made it through all of Garbage's set where it started to actually rain during the set.
Was outside.
Yeah. I didn't know it was outside. Otherwise, I would have brought gear for that. And he didn't tell me it was outside because we had assigned seats. I'm like, oh, we've got assigned seats. It's an indoor venue. And then we get there and I go, dude, this can't be where we're going. He's like, I don't think so. And I'm like, yeah, because there's like lawn chairs and people bringing snacks and stuff. Like, this isn't jiving right now. Turns out it was our venue. And he's like, oh, I didn't know it was outside. So I had on my leather jacket and he just had on like another shirt.
Oh.
And so we didn't have anything for rain when it started to rain. So it started like drizzling and raining. And we pushed through Garbage and then Tears for Fears was starting to come out. And it took them, Garbage finished at 7:30. It was 8:10 by the time Tears for Fears finally came out on stage. Wow. I think they were waiting for it to get darker so some of the effects they had would work better. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, you guys needed to get your ass out here. Everybody's cold.
Just the opener? Wow.
It's raining. And we're all kind of miserable right now, waiting on you to come out here and grace us with your knowledge. Yeah, I thought that was weird too, that Tears for Fears was
you think like
the main act and Garbage was the opening act. Because Garbage is a more current band than Tears for Fears. And Tears for Fears hasn't really been active in like 10 years or more.
Fair, but I mean, what's the last time Garbage has done?
They just came out with an album like a couple of years ago, I think.
Well, that's embarrassing for
and Tears for Fears is coming out with an album or just released an album, which is why they were going on tour. Because they were doing their first album in like 10 years or more, right? So that's why they wanted to do it. Yeah, she's still kind of cute, man. She's getting older, but she's still kind of cute.
I don't like that haircut, but yeah, I also had.
She's only in her mid-50s.
Back in the day.
I mean, I wouldn't say she's cute, but she's still good. She's still good for being mid-50s.
There you go.
Yeah,
they put on a hell of a show, man. Like, literally for an outdoor venue, it sounded like they were doing a studio album. I'm not even kidding. It sounded that good.
Wow.
So we made it through all their set, and about 2 tracks in, I look over at my buddy and I'm like, you okay? And he's like, dude, I almost can't feel my toes. And I'm like, that's not great. So we made it through like 3, maybe 4 songs of Tears for Fears. And then we're like, okay, he's like, let's go. Because I told him, I said, dude, if you're cold and you need to go, you let me know. Like, you bought the tickets, you drove, we'll go when you want to go. He's like, all right, let's go. So we bounced on that and got some dinner, and then today we went to see Top Gun Maverick.
How was that?
Oh, it's amazing, dude. I think I like it better than the first movie.
I've heard.
Oh, it's outstanding. They really, I think they really did put them through their paces, man. Like when you're watching Tom Cruise like fly the F-18, he's literally having that kind of labored breathing, like when pilots are pulling a lot of G's, that you'll see them, that breathing pattern they're doing to try to keep their lungs from just compressing themselves completely, pulling those G's. He's literally doing that breathing. So I think he's actually flying the plane at about 4 or 5 G's or better. Like, it's just stupid.
They trained him on that. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. If you guys have not seen that movie, go see it.
My wife and I want to see it.
If you like the first Top Gun, you will love this movie.
Excellent.
If you didn't like the original Top Gun, this is probably not going to change your mind on Top Gun. But if you enjoyed the first movie, I was hard pressed to say I still like the first one better after seeing this one. I actually think this is a better movie.
Wow. All right.
So I thought it was pretty stellar. Rarely do I ever see a sequel that completely matches up to and in some ways exceeds the first movie. And this was really good. So yeah, it's been a busy weekend. So I was glad I kind of took the time off because I had like no time this weekend so far. I've been really busy.
Really can only think of a couple. Well, I can think of 3 movies off the top of my head that are better than the originals. And I mean, they're pretty mainstream movies as movies go. Empire Strikes Back, Wrath of Khan.
Ooh, that's a big. I agree with you. That's a big debate.
See,
if you're British,
really,
I would be
that
really
Wrath
angry
of Khan would be better than Star Trek: The Original Motion Picture.
Like for me, it's no contest. But it seems I've had that debate so many times. It seems to me the pattern that I've seen. If you're American, you prefer Wrath of Khan. If you are British or European, you think that the original motion picture is better.
They're allowed to be wrong.
I'm on the fence on this one because I love both of those movies, and it's taken me like years past the original Star Trek movie to really kind of fall in love with it. And I think what I like about it the most now is it feels more like Star Trek should be more of, which is exploration and discovery.
The motion picture was a better Star Trek movie. Like it was so slow and tedious. It like doled out the plot in like molasses, but it was very, very science fiction. It was very like not Star Wars science fiction. It was Star Trek science fiction.
Right.
So I can see why if you're a boring British person, I don't know if we have any British people in the audience to make fun of. You would prefer that.
Well, see, I like Khan because it's a better action film,
movie.
and it fits a little bit more within how they portrayed Star Trek on the show, right? Because there's always a little bit more action oriented and stuff like that, with a little bit more angst and conflict. If you're looking for the discovery and exploration part of Star Trek, like what was really at the core mission of Star Trek, then the first one's a better movie.
Mm-hmm. But I would agree with you. Wrath of Khan, I think, is a much better movie overall.
Yeah, and you got to remember that Wrath of Khan was a continuation of basically of an episode of the show.
Yeah.
So there was that. Oh,
cousin wasn't the original
Atari Star Trek game. We're kind of off topic already, man. We're gonna come into it because these guys wanted to do Atari.
I don't know how much we're going to be talking about Atari this episode, guys. We're just going to be talking about everything.
Right, because Nick, we know you weren't an Atari guy, so we're trying to.
I'll be honest. My love affair with gaming really started heavily with the NES. I had a ColecoVision. I played it. There's some games on there I remember fondly, but they're not ones that I go back to and go, oh no, I need to go play like Zaxxon right now. No, I've gone back and played Zaxxon not that long ago, probably within the last 6 months or so, and I'm like, this is fun. It's okay. Not amazing.
Sega made a Star Trek game for the Atari.
Did it?
Yes, they did.
They did.
They made it. It was based on their arcade game.
Curious to hear some info on Atari consoles beyond the 2600. Well,
we've already talked about the Atari. I think we already talked about the entire Atari lineup because I remember talking about the Jaguar.
Yeah,
and
I don't know that we hit the 7800 or the 5200.
Yeah,
we briefly touched on the links,
or the computer line,
Yeah, there was the Atari 800, the 400, and then the STs.
I had an 800 and a 1200 XL.
Bacon Ice Cream Productions in here, hey man,
Rich.
So let's in here. Atari Jaguar was a decent system, but it had no games worth playing. I know some people that would argue with you on that.
I don't agree with that.
I'm more in your camp. I saw the Jaguar and I went, eh. And then I saw the controller and I went kind of, eh.
Well, the controller.
Then I saw it play and I was like,
there are look, there are a
Nick's
handful.
Love of Porkies and Quadrupong. I'm not leaving till the full review.
I can't. I don't know that. I think for the limited amount of games that the Atari Jaguar had, there were some great titles. And I mean, we could start there if you want.
I will argue that the Jaguar did some very, very solid attempts at early like 3D games. Zombie streamed AVP and
which was
on there,
phenomenal.
And both of those looked pretty good. I would argue that those games were not ready to be on a console because you didn't have dual analogs yet.
No, but I would tell you that. So here's the thing about the Jaguar version of Doom. The Jaguar version of Doom turned out to be not only the best version of Doom, but the version that John Carmack himself worked on. So that he believed in what the hardware could do. So he really was like Doom on the Jaguar was an id Software game, and was the best version on a console. And definitely better than the 32X version, definitely better than, the SNES version. I mean, it was the consummate version of Doom.
Did the SNES have a version of Doom? I don't remember it trying to be on there. That
Yeah.
seems like a terrible mix for me. That just seems too advanced.
The music is pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
That was about the best you could say about it. But yeah.
But otherwise,
there's a couple of gems on there going to Zombie, like Ultra Vortex is a good MK clone. I saw him play that. That wasn't too bad.
Yep.
A lot of people are big fans of Tempest.
Tempest 2000 was.
I don't especially see
amazing.
the appeal of something like Tempest personally. It kind of looks like a seizure nightmare to me.
I had that
get
one
why
too.
people would like it. You what?
The soundtrack was amazing. I mean, the soundtrack on the Atari on a lot of Atari games was beyond its time, and after Tempest 2000, they rolled out Defender 2000, which was also a slick.
I don't think I've ever seen anything on Defender. Like the Jaguar just wasn't a console. That was a weird time for consoles for me because the Jaguar was trying to lead the pack of hitting the 64-bit market.
Mm-hmm.
They were actively competing with the PlayStation. The Nintendo 64 was on the horizon, and I was holding out for the Nintendo 64. Looking at the Jaguar, nothing on it impressed me at the time. Nothing graphically about it, nothing on the controller. Seeing Atari try to come back seemed kind of comical at the time because it had been Sega and Nintendo for so many years. And The last time I heard of Atari was right before the crash. And they have a long history of missing the opportune launch window, right? Like after the 2600, it's kind of like they missed almost every good launch window outside of the Lynx, which came out just before the Game Gear.
Well, here's what's funny though. For all of that, the Jaguar had a lot to do with part of Sega's downfall. Because follow me.
I'm struggling here, but go ahead.
Remember,
real quick, Mike.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead and connect those dots for us, Mike.
The 32X. The 32X was a response to the upcoming Jaguar. In 1994.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Actually. That's why they built the 32X. It was in that same time frame. Because remember when the Saturn came out was 95, right? That was the.
I think that's close.
Yes. So.
I'm looking it up right now just to be sure.
Sure.
1994 actually was its official launch, but I think that was in Japan. I don't think it hit the States until 95.
Right. So the Jaguar's release date in North America was 1993. It was November 93. Okay. When it came out, Sega was still working on the Saturn, but they needed something in the meantime. So president of Sega at the time, Nakayama, called up Joe Miller over at Sega of America and said, we need something for this. And that's where they started trying to frantically work on. How cares anyway? Shut up, Sega.
I got that one just before you rejected it.
Well, that is where that came from. They needed a response to the Jaguar.
Well, that's just Sega being Sega. I mean, they made the Sega CD in response to the Turbo Duo. I mean, they were notoriously bad about like doing knee-jerk reactions to shit they didn't need to react to. They needed to just stick with a consistent plan. That was Sega. That was Sega Japan's whole problem is they were dumb, exceptionally dumb. Like anything that came out, they needed an immediate response without putting any forethought into it whatsoever. And while the core of the 32X isn't necessarily bad,
no, it's the same.
the way it got executed and the way it got supported was freaking terrible. And it didn't get supported right because the Saturn came out within a week of that thing in Japan. So everybody in Japan, because it's Japan and Sega and they're retarded, they don't support anything that doesn't like do really well in Japan, right? They never looked at their other markets to see what was actually selling, which was their whole problem all along. Their consoles were selling better and doing better outside of Japan, but they kept focusing on Japan first instead of looking at a more international market, and it screwed them time and time again.
And the 32X, while it had the same CPUs as the Saturn, it wouldn't do any. It had no compatibility to it. It was basically, it was to elongate the lifespan of the Genesis. And if you, there's been some great. I've always wanted to dive into that, but at the same time, there's been many other people before me that have done these retrospectives on the 32X.
I was actually going to do a full one on it at some point as well.
Yeah,
because it's one of those like failed peripherals almost from the get-go, mostly because of how it launched. But anyway, this all does tie to the Jaguar, guys.
Yes,
we're talking Atari.
It does.
We got off onto the 32X being a response to the incoming Jaguar.
So while the Jaguar was not, the Jaguar should have done better than it did. The way I was getting on was, it's not just like AVP. Don't forget that Rayman was a Jaguar game. That's where Rayman got started, from Ubisoft. Can I ban Hector?
No, you may not.
Am I not?
No, you may not.
I am a mod.
Yeah, I'm just
amazing. Ban Hector.
Nope.
Maz's not gonna do that.
Nope. And you're not going to do it because Hector's not a mod.
Touché.
You're not taking a Hector. Nope. I like Hector. Regardless of any opinions Hector may have, I like Hector. So you're not taking a Hector.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that Hector.
Just for that.
I don't know about that Hector guy. See,
I'm gonna put that up a few times.
This is supposed to be an Atari show, sir. You're not being very Atari.
So,
I was talking about.
I did look that up, and it doesn't appear that the 32X was a response to the Jaguar. It strikes me as odd because the PlayStation was coming like right around the corner, and the Jaguar was a 64-bit system. Well, okay, it was a dual 32-bit system that acted as a 64-bit system.
Right.
So it wasn't like a true 64-bit processor. It was two 32-bit processors doing the work to give you 64 bits processing power total, which works in its own way.
Well, yes, and it had a great ability to throw graphics around.
See, now he's got the puppy eyes out.
No, you said what you said, Hector. You said what you said. All right, so Lit. I'll agree about Rayman. Same thing about 3DO and Gex, but isn't really worth buying either system just to play those games. But when you added Tempest and AVP and Rayman, and there were a couple of other games that were pretty good quality on there. I'm just trying to think. There was Defender 2000. There was Breakout 2000. Doom, Double Dragon 5.
Well, how many of those were actual
was on there?
Jaguar exclusives, though? Because I know that the Tempest 2000 was available on other consoles. So was Rayman.
Not at the time. Rayman didn't come out again until the Saturn. which was later. Tempest 2000.
Rayman eventually almost got ported to everything.
Yes,
it
Rayman.
like.
Rayman.
I have it on the Game Boy Color, I think. So
yes, but actually, the Tempest 2000. Tempest 2000 did not.
Rayman. I have it on the Game Boy.
I have no idea where that's coming from. I've got my echo coming through my headphones to not have that happen.
Nice. The PC version of Tempest 2000 didn't come out
Rob. I think
till way after the Jaguar.
Yeah, I'm just screwing around now. I'm just putting our chat in stereo.
There we go.
No. I mean it was a Jaguar game until Jaguar died. Then they put it out on PC, and now more recently they had put it out on some other consoles.
Well, AVP was on PC pretty early on, dude. It was a PC game that got ported to the Jaguar. AVP itself. Now Rayman, maybe, but not AVP, and not Doom for sure.
No, Doom, of course not. No.
Because I played AVP on PC. There's no way on Guide Screen Earth I'd want to play that on a Jaguar. Having played it on PC, absolutely not. You will take my mouse and keyboard out of my cold dead hands on that one. That would be a nightmarish experience on a controller like the Jaguars. No, absolutely not. I get people that had the console. It was a good option for them to be able to play it, and maybe the only option for them to play it. But I would never want to play it that way. Either I'm really busy, you guys haven't been on in 2 weeks. We have not been on in 2 weeks because it's an every other week show. But you may have been very busy. I don't know. But welcome, Brosa. Good to see you, man.
I think that came out afterwards, though. So I'm looking at Alien vs. Predator, which is published by Atari in North America. It was developed by Rebellion Developments. And, I mean, that was a game that came out in 94. According to what I'm seeing here, the Windows version of that game didn't come out till 99. Or it says, after its release, Rebellion Developments would go on to develop other games in the Alien vs. Predator franchise, such as Aliens vs. Predator for Microsoft Windows and Mac OS in 1999. It is possible that it was not the same game you played.
Maybe not. I don't know.
No.
But we have more consoles than the Jaguar to discuss. They have 2600, 5200, 7800, and the Lynx. 2600 obviously started off video games. To kind of backtrack way back to the beginning, that was the very first home console launch. Now, the arcade was pretty big at the time, and so they were pretty big on grabbing IPs and bringing over arcade ports of games, and trying to make things look as much like the arcade as they could for a home experience. There wasn't a whole lot of... Well, eventually they got a ton of games that were basically just built for the 2600 under the same premise as you would an arcade game, going for how long you can survive and high score. Nothing really having any kind of end goal, basically because, well, it's the first gaming system. I don't think anybody had conceptualized of that quite yet. I don't even think E.T. had like an end, did it? I think you just finished and then you looped.
I don't know. I tried to erase
an end screen.
Did it? Okay.
Did it?
Yeah, once you collected all the treasures, I think there's 20. I think there's 20 treasure. I've never done it, so I can't personally speak to this. But I believe that once you collected all 20 treasures, the game was done. That was the goal.
Well, I mean, that would be one of the few 2600 games that at least I would be aware of. Now, my experience is pretty limited. That would
I'm not trying to
like
prove you wrong. I'm basically saying there are the exceptions do ultimately prove the rule in this case. So they're all arcade-like experiences. I would say that the games that were developed specifically for the Atari 2600, mainly by Activision, were better than their almost all of the arcade ports. But
well, it just didn't have. It was like most early consoles, all the way through, like I would say, the 16-bit, even to a certain extent, the 32-bit era. struggled to replicate arcade quality
Oh yeah.
for the most part. So they did the best they could within the hardware limitations they had, but there's no getting around it. The 2600's hardware was much more limited than something that was tailor-made for a specific game at the time. It just didn't have the hardware for it, which is fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, in 1972, you know, you didn't have, and then video games, the arcades weren't that technologically advanced
until you get bored.
Yeah,
but that's how a lot of Atari worked. A lot of Atari games just worked that way. It just kept getting harder and harder and harder until you couldn't compete anymore.
Like functionally, graphics aside, that's how arcades worked.
Yeah, pretty much.
Also. I mean, it was a different time. I can't really have it these days. Games, there are plenty of games these days that actually are kind of just score driven, but typically, in order to capture the interest of your modern audience, there's a whole lot more that they pack in those games, like it's unlockables, some kind of rudimentary level up system. I don't think that there's much interest now in pure score based games. Could be wrong, but
I would argue that they're making a comeback, but they're making a comeback in R. Because
like,
you have
I guess what I'm like, I really liked Pac-Man Championship Edition. Those games, which, you know, obviously are score driven game. The idea to get as many points as you can in 5 or 10 minutes. But there's so much more that goes on with those games. So I couldn't get into just Pac-Man anymore. There's got to be more to it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. There's still some people like the Pac-Man 99 and stuff like that. People love that, but there's more competition between you and the other players.
And that's definitely
again, right?
That's just
so that adds another factor
that they're actually including with the game to make it more interesting beyond just the basic Pac-Man premise.
Right.
They have to do other stuff with it.
The 5200 seemed, at least from what little exposure I've had to it again, because I never had any of these Atari systems, to be much the same. A lot of the things that I saw out of its library when I did some research on it were kind of upgraded versions of the 2600 games in a lot of ways, like better graphical fidelity, not as much on the system, though I do think they had some stuff like Gremlins and things like that on there. I think that hit on the 5200.
Gremlins,
but again, that seemed to be
Bruce
more of a
Lee.
high score game. Like you just kind of kept going on that one. I don't think it had an in credit at all either, if I recall.
It was just I want to say 2 scenarios that just kept on looping faster and faster.
I think so, yeah. And then you would have more of you would have so many mogwais that you had to like take care of, and then you'd have like a bunch of the actual gremlins themselves that you would have to find a way to compete against on a single screen. You didn't really scroll anywhere; it was all on like one screen.
Yeah,
and you had to kind of figure out how to deal with it.
It was basically like Space Invaders. Either one was like Space Invaders.
Yeah, only not laid out, whereas everything's coming from the top at you. They were kind of just on the stage.
Yeah, they kind of swooped them from the side and just dropped down for the Mogwai. And I think
Right.
I think the Gremlins did the same thing too. But I think it was still a paddle-driven game, also.
And Brad makes a good point that casual games tend to include a score chasing concept as well.
Yeah.
To where basically you're just looking to get like a high score or get to the next level. Like one of the fun games I have is like Tappers of the Universe. It's a Masters of the Universe game. And the only point's to get to the next stage, to up your guys so that they can do more damage so that you can handle the next stage. There's no end to the game. You can reset your loop and then go through it again, and you get certain perks for that. But there's really no end to the game. It's just meant to like kill time, right? And a lot of games are like that, or you just collect stuff for the sake of collecting things or whatnot. There's no real end. The 7800 came out like a year or two after the NES. I want to say it launched in like 86 or 87, but only in California, but it didn't get a wide release until like a year later. So the wide release, I think, was maybe around 88.
Although I think it was ready to go before the NES.
It was ready to go in like 83, but the person who took it over, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, he was the same guy who did the Commodore 64, was big into PC, and he wanted to push through. He wanted to do PCs, so he aimed everything at the PC market for Atari and kind of shelved the console market, which put the 7800 just sitting in a warehouse somewhere until much later on.
The 7800 came out, as Rab was just saying, in 86. It was
Trammell. That's it. Trammell.
Yeah. Oh, right. Who had a Commodore at the time. It was actually going to come out in 84, but yeah, when they sold the company, it made it. So here's the 7800 was a weird duck, in that graphically, and I've seen videos that have kind of done some comparisons. Graphically, it just about could stand toe to toe with the NES. Just about. There were some definite things that the NES did better, but there were some games on the Atari 7800 that graphically looked fantastic.
Well, you got to remember the NES was using a chip from like 78, and it was only really meant to have like a 2-year lifespan. It was meant to keep them ahead of the competition for roughly like 2 years,
right,
of what the existing competition was, because they had the PPU that worked with that MOS chip, which was the same chip that was used in, I want to say, a couple other consoles. I think the ColecoVision might have even used it, but it wasn't a new chip. That chip had been around for a while.
No.
That they put in there. So they weren't putting like the latest and greatest technology in like they tried to do today and then undercut everything. They started out with a relatively underpowered chip, but with enough co-processing and stuff to make it stand up and look more impressive than the competition.
No doubt.
The 7800 being very close to it is not unreasonable at all.
Yeah.
If not better in some respects, depending on the hardware they put in it to start. Because they could have put hardware in to start.
Well, here's the mistake they made with the 7800. They used a lot of the 2600 architecture for backward compatibility. It was compatible with the 2600. But instead of, so the Atari 7800 sound was all 2600 audio. So if you listen to any game on a 7800, it sounds like it's a 2600 game, because that is what they did. They tried to get around that by putting what they called Pokey sound chip into game cartridges, kind of like what you saw in the 16-bit era with add-on chips. But yeah, it was ugly sounding. I mean, very ugly sounding. And you could hear it in games like Xevious and stuff like that needed all that sound.
Well, here in a nutshell is the problem with Atari. Is one, with the 2600, the 2600 didn't sell well to start. It actually sat on the shelves going nowhere for like almost 2 years. They didn't know how to market it. In fact, I don't think they marketed it. It almost took Warner Media, which is now Time Warner, to buy them and market the damn thing. And then it started to sell. And they didn't really have a whole lot of confidence in it. They were just trying to get rid of the stock. And then once it started to do well, they wanted to turn around very quickly, have a sequel in the 5200. Now, the 5200 had a lot of manufacturing issues. The controllers are notoriously kind of chintzy in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, they were.
So they were considered pretty bad. And it was a weird controller design going from the 2600 to the 5200 because it looked a little bit more like an Intellivision controller and a ColecoVision controller.
Yeah.
With the similar overlays, too. I think it had overlays, didn't it?
I don't think it had overlays. But it did have the number pad. And it did have, you know what? You could put overlays on it. Now that I think about it, it wasn't in the same vein as sliding it in. It was like a square, because there were a couple games that had it. They had a square thing that you kind of stuck on there.
Yeah. So on top of that, it was the only console of its generation that wasn't backwards compatible with the 2600.
No, it was not.
Because the Intellivision 2 came out around that time, and it was backwards compatible with the 2600. The ColecoVision had an adapter which made it backwards compatible with the 2600. And the 5200 was the oddity that couldn't play its previous generation's games, which made it less desirable to the public to move to it and not have access to those games. Why not just buy a television, ColecoVision, get brand new experiences, not upgraded experiences of the same games, and be able to play your 2600 library? So that kind of hurt them a lot. Well, bought them for the 2600 launch. That's the only way they could get the thing finished and out. Yeah.
Yep. So here's the interesting part of the 5200. I was big into I was big into computers then. So I moved away from like the 2600 and the Intellivision, and my father got us an Atari 800. The technology in the 800, 4 and 800 computers, and if anybody remembers the 400 with the membrane keyboard, I had the 800, which had a real, the real keyboard, 2 cartridge slots, yada yada. That same chipset was used in the 5200. So the 5200 and the Atari 8-bit games were identical, and they were identical code and everything. That's part of the lack of the backward compatibility, was they tried to cut costs by using one unified chipset in both their computer and their home system. That's why if you ever if you remember what was it? I think it was the
yeah, and this is what I remember about the Atari as well, because Rap says this too. He mentioned that the most of the games were just better versions of the 2600 that Atari promised in '83.
Yeah, but I will say that the games that did come out, like let's take Pac-Man. Pac-Man on the 2600 looked like ass. It was still, but it was the only Pac-Man you had at the time. The 5200 / computer version of Pac-Man looked like the arcade. And when I mean it was arcade perfect. And so that's some of what they did. I mean, I had tons upon tons of Atari computer games. I mean, tons upon tons. And games like Choplifter looked better than even Choplifter on I'd say it even looked better than Choplifter when it came out on the Master System, for goodness sakes. But there were games that
Master System's an odd system. Like there's a lot of love for the system, but that's kind of a weird system. Like a lot of things that they tried to make work on there probably should have been redesigned more in line for that console than to try to make it do what they were trying to do. Because they tried to do a lot of 16-bit games on that console, and it kind of suffered for it because they didn't really redesign it in the appropriate way to make it run the way it should run.
Mm-hmm.
Lost a lot of smoothness and movement because they tried to make it do too much that it just wasn't capable of. But that's another topic entirely. Go on.
Oh yeah. So and then the other computer that came out before, so there was the Atari ST. We can talk about the ST in a minute. But the predecessor to the 7800 was the Atari XE video game system, which was a 65XE home computer just repurposed, and then came out with a keyboard and a light gun. Yeah, the Atari had a light gun before even Sega did. It was before Sega and Nintendo did. And again,
Nintendo as a company was messing with light guns like in the 70s, but they just weren't putting them on a console.
They weren't putting it on console.
Yeah,
no, they weren't putting it on console. So games like Ball Blazer and Lode Runner all came out on these Atari consoles, and I mean those are the games that they were trying to get the computer market and the home video market, and couldn't figure out which way to go. So that gets into why there's no backward compatibility with the 2600. The 7800 kind of went the opposite way.
I think you might be right, Matthews. I think it was either that or something.
I mean, are we
Builder home system or something like that? That was the first kind of home system. This was the first one that didn't need like overlays on your screen to be able to do anything. Because Odyssey just had like overlays,
well, that was
and didn't really have any way of like actually scoring on it. So it depends on what you're kind of classifying as like as a home. It would be. I think it beat it just before. Now the one that really got the market going and got people more into it would be 2600.
Well, are we considering Pong a home console?
I mean, kinda. I mean,
it was an arcade game that came home.
It was, but the Odyssey had that before the Atari Corporation started doing Pong machines. I believe it was called Tennis, and then they stole it, called it Pong.
Oh yeah.
Here's something else.
Fairchild Channel F. That was it.
That's what I was picturing when.
The Fairchild I think was absolutely like the first, and then the Odyssey, and then Atari, but they're all kind of in that same gen. Atari's the one that's really more well known.
Thank you.
Kind of for blowing up the market, right?
Right.
No, sure. I wasn't trying to take over this.
No. You're fine. You're fine. This is all relevant to the conversation.
That is.
And it's making me wish I'd watched my Atari video, because I think I covered that in my Atari video. I just didn't watch it before we did the show.
I watched both of your guys' videos because I thought we were going to be talking about the Evercade and the and the VCS. But okay.
Oh, we'll get. Yeah, we can. But there's a lot of Atari that I think people don't realize, especially like when you get to the ST, because the ST was huge in Europe, whereas the Amiga was huge here. It was really weird how how Commodore and Atari continued to shake out before Nintendo hit the scene.
I love this comment.
Scramble porn. I loved my ST. I
have a hard time going back to this era of gaming.
I don't.
I just do not dig into it that deeply.
I don't. I have no problem. And honestly,
I know people love it. I have like no nostalgia for anything Atari has ever done.
RetroRoots and now playing it on the VCS, especially with the classic controller. Now, I'm going back, and it's going to be in my upcoming video. I went back to the Morgan Fairchild. It says my console, Morgan Fairchild.
I got a great rack on that console.
I spent like 2 hours last night after I got home from Hershey. Like everybody else went to bed. Came downstairs, did some recording, and just spent like 2 hours just going through and playing some old Atari computer games that I just had and remember, and wish I still had the actual computer.
Well, that's what's good about your VCS, is because a lot of the stuff can just run on the VCS, and it feels a little bit more like the original because you have that original design controller. It has a few nice additions to it, and like you said, it's not quite as durable, but it's built to do a few more modern things too, which might be part of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a video out on that soon. I'm starting to I like that controller. It feels a little flimsier than it actually is. But to your point, again, I'm going back. I went back and played these games that I grew up on. You guys both know what BBSs are, right? We're all old enough to remember BBSs. My first BBS ran on my 1200 XL. I ran 3 of them, and I ran 1 of them on my Atari. I would call up. I had the War Games modem. It was an Atari 300 baud acoustic modem that you dialed up and you put it on there. And you could call it CompuServe and all those places. I downloaded games on that with that modem. And it was, I could play old Atari stuff all day long, and I could play ST stuff all day long.
Hey, Fastback, good to see you, man.
Chris, what's up, brother? So I mean, those were my computer days before I got into the PC computing with the Tandy 1000 and all that. So
yeah, I mean, I started with PC computing with I want to say it was just called an American computer. It was, I don't even know what the processor was on it. I know everything was based off the processor speed at that time, because the guy they had help us set up the PC came in and tried to upgrade a processor at one point, and it made the timer on Wheel of Fortune go too fast for her. So she had to pull it out, put the old one back in. So that's where we kind of started with PC gaming. I remember printing out like tons of cards on the dot matrix printer. And
I used to print banners on that.
I used to format disc for and stuff like that. And then I remember playing Black Cauldron on there. And that's about the extent of like PC gaming that I really did a lot of back in the day. So I didn't do a ton of that back then because I just wasn't into PCs at the time. I was more into consoles and things like that. And I think around the time that we had that computer, even we had things like an NES. And I'd rather play the NES than to try to figure out not only I had to put the disc in, I had to figure out how to launch the game and everything like that. And then I had to like try to figure out how to get the controller working to be compatible with it because we had like a little like controller for it, and that wouldn't work on all the games. And so it was kind of for me at that age, it was kind of complicated for me to learn how to play things on it. So I didn't gravitate to it as much.
I K-pop group. Oh.
We got some really good comments here.
Yes. Sniper Elite was definitely not. Yes, I do have a long and sordid history of Atari. I really do.
Yeah, Mike has more of a love affair with Atari than I think the rest of us have. Like, I knew it in passing, and Rob's been very quiet, so I'm assuming he either can't get a word in edgewise or he just doesn't have much to say on the topic.
I don't like to interrupt.
Do what?
I don't like
interrupt, man. You're going to have to. Mike's going to talk all night if you don't.
I had it at Atari 2600 growing up. As soon as I got an NES, that was old news, practically trashed. I vaguely remember trying to go back to like Pitfall after playing, Mario Brothers 2, and it was like, even then, this is too far removed now from what I'm used to, and even now I do have like a small collection of 2600 games that I've honestly been kind of using as a footrest tonight. And it's kind of fun to go back and look at the games. But anyone who says there's more than a few minutes of enjoyment on these games is kind of kidding themselves a little bit. It's a novelty now, and too difficult to actually play unless you're emulating them. Because obviously there's
even emulating some of the old
no shortage of
is a pain.
Compilations to play like all the flashbacks, which all have like a different selection of games. Most likely not the ones that you remembered as a kid, but so I don't know. That's where I stand. I have a bunch of flashbacks. I actually have a couple 7800s that I've hooked up a few times. But yeah.
Well, here's the thing with Mr. and emulation in general, you can go back and you can experience a lot of these games. The problem is some of the games, because of the controller design, don't necessarily work. And that comes more into play with, say, things like the 5200, the ColecoVision, and the Intellivision. And that's because of the keypad that they had on there. And that makes certain games very complicated to play. Go back and play ColecoVision, you choose the level by using something on the keypad when you start. And since I could never remember where in the hell anything was mapped on my controller, I might start at level 1 and I might start at level 10. And you don't know when you're in the game. So it kind of gets weird that way with some of the games. Now, the 2600 is probably the most accessible that way because everything was pretty much done with like one button and the one stick. So for the most part, you can pretty much emulate any of those and go back and play those. 5200 ones, I think, run okay. 7800 ones run fine. Those actually run really well. So their idea of a controller for that one is kind of weird. It was a D-pad that looked more like an arcade stick. It's almost like they were trying to do an analog stick, but it didn't function like an analog stick. It's kind of funky. And those work fine. But that's getting right around the NES era. And I don't know anybody that looks at the 7800 and looks at the NES and picks the 7800. There's probably one soul out there, and they're probably just like, they're going to be raging on me on the replay of this one. But I don't know anybody that would go.
They're just doing it to be cool.
I would have to think so, because almost anybody around that time would either pick the Master System, the NES, over the 7800, because they were all out right around the same time. And the gaming landscape was changing radically around that time. 7800 still stuck to that more arcade roots of like trying to do the high score methodology of gaming without really having that many games that had an in card. And again, a lot of those were upgrades of stuff that you've been playing since the 2600. So from that standpoint, they weren't like blowing anybody's skirts up because they were still doing like upgraded versions of the same game. Which we're kind of in that era now again too, to an extent.
The 7800 did have a really cool like a NES style controller that I found on eBay one time, and they're really expensive to get a hold of. And but that's how I would like to play. I think it is, because obviously the 7800 also plays 2600 games.
Correct.
It works on everything. I don't know how well the controller itself works, just even brand new. I'm trying to find. Have you seen this controller, guys? I'm trying to find it for you right now.
I was about to say, can you throw it up in the chat or share your screen?
It's really cool looking.
I do remember the 5200 having some like weird controller options, because I think you could even plug. It had the same pinouts as the Genesis, so I think you could even plug a Genesis controller.
You can, as well as an old. You could plug the old 2600 joysticks. You could plug the 2600 joysticks into the 5200 as well, by the way, because that's what I used on my computer. Now it was easier to play. It was easier to play these games on an Atari computer because you had a keyboard, so you didn't have to worry about the touchpad. You just typed what you needed on the keyboard. But I used my joystick of preference actually was about this big, had a silver, had a metal shaft and a ball on top and a white button at the top of it. And that was my favorite joystick to use on those games. And it was great. I mean, it was very responsive. It was very good.
Oh, this is a 7800 controller. Sure this. That's the 7800 controller we got in the States. That, I believe, is the 7800, if I'm remembering. It might have been compatible with the 5200, but I remember seeing that in pictures of the 7800. And I never really liked the design of this controller, because it was kind of like a D-pad, because you can see hints of the D-pad, like here. But then you have this. Yeah. Almost like it's trying to be an analog stick. And then you get this recess for the buttons that are convex instead of concave, which is also kind of weird. But at least you've got this recess to kind of keep your fingers in place. Sort of. Kind of.
Yeah, that little thumbstick comes out.
Does it? Okay.
Most of those controllers you're going to get nowadays, that thumbstick has long been broken off and lost to time. So that's what I have. So it basically looks like
Scepter's saying he can't hear. Because anybody else hear Matthews?
Yeah.
No, my mic was off, and I was talking for a little bit. I was saying really fascinating, hard-hitting stuff. I'm sorry, guys.
I was like, wait a minute, because I can hear you, so everybody else should be able to hear you. What's going on?
Yeah. No, I was saying the same stuff. So, But yeah, I said that was for the 7800. I wasn't trying to say that was anything else.
Okay, I thought you said it was for the 52 because I know the 52 could use some weird controller layouts because they use that kind of like it was almost like what a 9-pin serial connector. I think wasn't it, Mike? The old serial connectors.
Yes.
It was like 9 or 12 pin. I can't.
Yeah, it
remember.
was 9. Yeah.
And it's the same one that the Genesis used for most of their stuff. The NES used a proprietary one.
Correct.
I think the Master System controllers, the original Master System, used the same pinout. So I think you could use those too.
Hang on, Mick. Now, out of the box, I believe the 7800 came with this controller that I just sent you a picture of. So
Okay,
that D-pad style controller, I think, was something you had to buy extra if you wanted it.
Oh, I do remember this thing. Hold on, I gotta.
Not nearly as good looking, I don't think.
Now, this is not a very good looking.
And that's what comes with.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah, that was better half of garbage.
Yeah, that's not a very good controller.
No, and you are correct about the Master System gamepad. It was the same pinout as the Genesis.
Get the joystick wedge. Okay, so this is the one that we got here.
Yeah.
And then the other one is here. That's what Rab was yelling in chat. He was like, I can hear Rob. He's like, I'm shouting. They just skip over me. Well, we like skipping over you, Rob. I do the same thing to you on Wednesdays. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, at least they treat you consistently, sir.
How he treats us too, Rab. Don't worry.
So yeah, the 7800 could have been like actually really big had it released when it was originally ready.
Yeah.
The big problem with that one was again the launch. The 5200's problem wasn't so much when it came out because it tried to launch itself right next to the ColecoVision and the Intellivision, knowing that those were going to be competition, and they were kind of ready for it, except for the fact that it was like 3 times bigger than the original console.
Yeah, well, and they made it.
It had no backwards compatibility.
Right. They made it that big to put the controllers in the back. It was weird.
It was kind of a ridiculous thing that they built that did do well. And then shortly after the 7800, they tried again with the Lynx. Now the Lynx was coming out on the heels of the Game Boy, which had been entrenched for a couple of years, and it came out just before the Game Gear. It was the first color handheld, if I'm correct, and I'm sure Brad will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the first colored handheld, the Game Gear coming out second. And it had a pretty short battery life, even though it had 6 AA batteries like the Game Gear used, 3 on each side. And then it would run for somewhere between, I think they touted 4 hours of battery life, but I think you were closer to like 2.5 or 3 on longevity, because I know the Game Gear was pretty bad about that too. And that thing was beastly. Huge.
Yeah, you can snowboard down a mountain on it.
Yeah,
yes.
It was gigantic, and the button layout was weird.
The button layout was weird, but as big as it was, it had a small screen.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find a.
Oh, here I got you one.
I think I can find images of it. It's just stupid in design.
Here back.
And there were like 2 or 3 versions of this, if I recall. And they kind of made it to where you could play it either direction, which means like
yes,
the weird design of this thing was more or less so. Well,
go ahead, use the one I got. It's
okay. Is it just a full image?
Yep.
Okay, nice, that's better. Yeah. That'll work. That's what I was actually looking for, and I think it was close to it. You got to it before I did. So this thing, the idea behind this is good because you only ever use 2 buttons. It was meant to be a left-handed or right-handed system. Meaning, if you held it this way, you would use these 2 buttons. If you flipped it around, where this was on the right-hand side, you could use these 2 buttons. Just the only problem was is all these would be, and everything would be reversed. And it was supposed to be able to rotate accordingly. So that it was good for left-handed people and right-handed people. Good in theory, kind of weird in execution. What's that?
Yeah.
So here's next to a
here we go. Hang on.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Let me put you full screen there.
It's
it looks like the size of a Steam Deck.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna lie. It's about the same size.
I have a Game Boy here for size comparison.
I mean,
So,
that was
Game Boy. Oh no! And the lengths. But I mean, I kind of like the idea of it being this large, so you could actually like flip it if you needed to play. If you were one of the weird left-handed people, and
wow.
So, yeah, I mean, and the Lynx was not developed by Atari. It was actually purchased.
Yep.
It was Epics or something like that.
Yep.
That originally designed it and couldn't get it fully to market, so they came to an agreement with Atari, and they manufactured the hardware while Atari manufactured software for it.
A slightly smaller.
See, the version on top I like a little bit better because it's smaller.
Yeah, but I like it because the screen is bigger.
Still redonkulous, man. It's so wide.
But the screen is bigger, isn't it? Put them back up together.
I don't think this. Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Or maybe it's just the. Yeah, I think that screen is a little.
I think the screen's a little bigger on the second one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the funny thing about the Lynx too is that it was, if you think about it, I mean, it was the first color handheld. The Game Gear wouldn't come out for another year or two.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the one that really took off though, was the Game Gear. The Lynx, I think a few people had it, but it was kind of confusing. It was kind of big. Nobody really knew it. Nobody really had any confidence in Atari at the time. And so this was just before, a couple of years before they did the Jaguar. The Jaguar was like their last console attempt.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the list, they released 76 games for the Lynx, which is not bad. I'm looking to see.
It's a Steam Deck with a Casio digital watch screen.
There you go.
It's true. It's true. It's got a really tiny screen.
If you think about
the battery life was so bad on the thing, if you'd had a bigger screen, you've only done like an hour and a half. And apparently, hardware-wise, it was a little bit more powerful than the Game Gear, if I recall.
Yes. And here's some of the. I mean, go ahead.
Let's ask about the weight. The weight of the system itself isn't really too bad. Remember that there are going to be 6 AA batteries in there too. So I would imagine that once it's actually powered on and working in your hands, it's got some weight to it. So
yeah, so did the Game Gear actually. But the Game Gear for me always had a lot of weight because I bought that external battery. I bought that external battery pack and almost permanently had it plugged in with that because batteries were freaking expensive. And
also, real quick, Nick, I brought another little bit of visual.
Here we go.
Because we were talking about it. I found this at a rummage sale and I got it for $5 because the guy didn't know what it was. But it's one that
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Pornographic Atari 2600. This is Bachelor Party. I think
I didn't even know Bachelor Party had a game on the Lynx.
No, I don't think it's based on the movie Bachelor Party. It's just
it's got the cover art for it though. That's the cover poster, isn't it?
Oh,
and it's basically Pong, I think, as I recall. I've never played it. It just looks kind of hilarious on a shelf for those who actually know what it is. I just had to grab it when I was grabbing the Lynxes.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah, the Lynx and the Game Gear were both kind of heavy because if you've ever held 6, even just holding 6 AA batteries in your hand is a solid amount of weight. So imagine that on top of whatever frame and screen and all the other electronics. And you got a pretty good idea that both systems were kind of heavy. The Game Boy pretty much continued to dominate the handheld market because they were fairly smart. For 4 AA batteries, you could run for, God, it had like 40 hours, I want to say, a battery life on the original Game Boy. Am I right there?
20 hours.
20, okay. Still pretty ridiculous.
That was insane compared to what the competition were giving. But it was just a very...
It's kind of standard now for a 4-hour runtime on a handheld, right? Because, I mean, most of the DSs run that way. 3DS runs that way. The Steam Deck runs about that. I want to say the Switch and the Wii U would operate about that. The handheld unit on the Wii U would be dead in a couple hours. I think it only lasted about 2 hours. Your battery died. Yeah, I do. That huge battery pack that you'd have to carry around, and you didn't necessarily. I don't think you actually had to have it plugged into a wall. You charged it plugged into the wall, and then you could unplug it. And you could carry it with you, and it would run for a period of time off of that without you actually using your batteries or in lieu of your batteries. So, but yeah. We use batteries at recess for Fitzwits at school. Oh, God, our chat's great tonight. What's up, Back? Good to see you, man.
I mean, this list of games that the Lynx had,
it has a good library.
The Lynx has got an interesting little library to it. I've seen some of the games on the Evercade collection, and they're not all rock stars. Some of them are pretty rough, but they had they had a lot of original titles on there because they couldn't get third-party support.
It had no third-party.
So it was did a lot of original stuff. Do what? No, Rob? Sorry.
Yeah, it had no third-party support. So is I mean, I know it had the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden, Double Dragon, Gauntlet,
involved at all.
Joust. That was Williams. Joust was on here. Lemmings. Pac-Land. Pit Fighter. I'm just going off of games that weren't.
You can't list Pit Fighter and keep a serious faces to that being a good game.
I'm just saying
it's not a good game.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying.
Xenophobe, I think, was the big killer app.
Okay, Brian's saying most of the Linux Evercade games are indie titles with Songbird, and they're not quite as good.
Cyberball, Tournament Cyberball was on that list. Super Off-Road,
and
Rampage.
What's that really cool Hydro Thunder? Is that what the arcade game that you actually sat down on the
Hydro
motorbike to drive?
Oh,
I have it, but
you sat down on a motorbike.
That's not Hydro Thunder. That's
something else.
I don't think it's that's a like a wave rig. I forgot what the. I'm actually loading up the links right now just to see if it even works. I have it in box, whatever it is.
Yeah, the links actually had some neat games, and a lot of them were either
Stun
arcade ports or they were originals.
What was the name of the game, Rob? Stun Runner.
I don't even remember that game.
STUN. So cool. Yes, I loved that in the arcade. I actually now have that on my Midway Arcade Treasures on the Xbox. I loved.
Yeah, it's on the. Is it on the third one?
The third one with all the other racing games. What a great game that was.
Yeah, Hydro Thunder was a Dreamcast game. That's why when he said something like Hydro Thunder, I'm like, that was like years later after the links.
Yep. Well, yeah, it was a Dreamcast port of the arcade. Then then it was bought by Vector Unit. Well, actually, the Hydro Thunder on the Dreamcast, just as an aside, is Microsoft owns the Hydro Thunder IP. Vector Unit then made Hydro Thunder Hurricane for
We're going to argue that Pit Fighter is a good game. I'd rather play Shanghai. I don't think I've ever heard of Shanghai Zombie.
Shanghai.
That's basically Mahjong.
Oh, okay.
No, I thought there was maybe I'm thinking of something else.
It's the Gunshy on the Microsoft was based on Shanghai. It was I don't know if you could actually see the screen. I mean here's Stun Runner playing on it. There we go.
You can kind of see it. The reflection's kind of weird.
Oh, you have a crack. Yeah. Is that a crack or is that a hair?
No, there's the Link's cover plate comes off too, so I got a little hair in it. So
okay.
But I mean, wait till the game starts running. It actually looks really good. You find the right the viewing angle is really rough.
Yeah, the viewing angle on all these older systems are kind of rough.
Oh wow.
God, I wish you guys could
wow.
hear.
That's not bad looking, dude. I mean, for that era, that's pretty good. That's right around Game Gear, if not a little bit better.
Yeah,
as far as like fidelity goes.
Yeah.
eBay it or YouTube it because it actually looks pretty.
It could use an OLED screen.
There we go. So I mean, look at that. That looks pretty good.
That looks.
That's
great.
not bad.
for a link.
And that's running at a pretty good clip for that era.
Yeah, I mean it's a good system. It just obviously some issues, but
Right.
For sure.
I mean the Game Boy couldn't do that.
Mm-mm.
Is that a crack?
Not a crack.
No,
Not a
perfect. Shut up.
No, if I shake it too hard, the link screen will pop off like this. So there's like a little cat hair or something right inside the screen. I just don't really want to pop off.
Dude, cat hair is one of those things, man. It gets everywhere.
It gets
Once
everywhere.
you own
It's like
cats,
sand.
you never get cat hair out of your house again.
Oh yeah, it does.
I haven't had a cat in like months, and I've still got cat hair on all my clothes. It's all over the floors. It's all over everything. Like you just, no matter how much you vacuum, you cannot get rid of it. It's just there permanently.
Oh yeah,
Just part of owning cats, man. At any point. With the characters in Child's Play 3, you can see playing a blue lighting on the links. Yeah,
was another really good looking game.
So eating paste is hanging out here too. I think I saw him come in earlier. I can't remember if I said hi.
Yeah. Hey, Paste. I don't think I said hi.
Oh, Zombie used it. Yeah, you have longer hair, and so does my wife. Her hair like frequently kills like every vacuum we've ever had. Matter of fact, we bought an iRobot, and it's the only vacuum I've been able to actually clean her hair out of, and that's because the rotors on it completely disassemble, so I can get the hair the hell out of there. It's a nightmare, dude. Oh yeah, dude, I love cats. I want cats again. I adore cats.
Yeah, we have 2 cats.
Seen replacement screens for the Lynx and Game Boys. A lot of people have been doing I've seen a lot of people doing modifications, particularly on the Game Boys. The Game Boy Colors and Game Boy Advance, they've been doing IPS screens on them and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of people doing that lately. That's a very popular mod.
So, did you want to ask me about the VCS, Rob? I know you said you were hoping we'd get there.
Oh, does it sound like you've have you played it?
So
no?
I have begun playing some of it. To be honest, I've been doing a lot more of the I don't know, a lot more of the trying to get things to run on it first, but I did play through some of the Atari VCS Vault, and somebody who runs a Twitter account called Atari or VCS Connect happened upon my video, really liked it, and gifted me like 4 games, including Tempest 4000. So I'm going to be diving. Yeah, so I'm going to be diving into the recharged games very soon. The Atari VCS Vault games are exactly what you expect. There's a set of arcade titles, and there's a set of 2600, and I think they're just 2600 games. The VCS Vault 2 comes with some 7800 stuff, and then there's some individual games you can buy as well for the 2600 and 7800, because basically it runs Stella. It basically runs Stella and MAME to emulate those games. And I show that in the video. That's
how a lot of these consoles run it. If you look at the NES online library on the Switch and stuff like that, they're all running emulators.
Yeah, let me.
It's not like close to original hardware. It's running more of an emulating thing. It might run a little cleaner, but it's mostly like emulation. It boils down to it. I think that's how a lot of the collections work too. Don't they just have like an onboard emulator?
Yeah, I believe so. Like the Atari Anniversary and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
after saying Stella is good, so
Stella is good. Stella is like the best 2600 emulator you get. So this is the classic controller. I'm going to be doing a bit more on this controller. Let me see if I can fire it. So it actually does light up. And if you turn it kind of like the same way, Nick, that we saw the
the way the Intellivision controller works. Yeah.
And what I like, you press down a button and that lights up. There's actually a second button on this controller, which it wasn't on the original Atari controller. But as I did find out, and I will show, the middle of the stick spins. So for the spinner games, like
you
Tempest
mentioned
and
that to me
Breakout,
before, and you said that on your video too. That's good for those.
Yep, and I'm going to be showing that off as well. And it even presses. I think it presses. Yeah, it even clicks in. So yeah, I mean, it is a bit plasticky. It doesn't feel as nice as the modern controller, and I just feel like if I'm in a like if I'm really in a heavy gaming session, I still want to break the stick. But this is I'm going to keep getting into working this controller in with some of the older games to see if it gives you that nostalgic feel.
I like the other controller it has also. I mean, that was a very good looking controller for obvious reasons. Since they basically copied
the Xbox controller is what they did.
The Xbox controller.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good controller design.
That's exactly what they did. And so that's the modern controller.
Well, to be fair, the Xbox controller didn't have that line going down the face, so it's not a complete.
But I did, and I showed this too in my video. I mean, they even down to the design is identical.
Concave little recesses in the thumbstick.
Yep. And the bottom part, the shape of the bottom. The only difference is that the Series X and S controller have their menu and context buttons kind of below the X button, whereas this is more like the older ones that had them on the side. I mean, otherwise it is identical, even down to if you look at the button layout, ABXY.
Yeah, the button layout and everything like that's the same. The bumper and triggers are slightly different. That piece in the middle is slightly different.
Yeah,
the D-pad's different.
So the bumper
it's just different enough to keep them out of trouble.
Well, I don't think Microsoft cares. I mean, if you think about it, the Stadia controller looked like that too.
Yeah, The triggers are wider on the.
They are
on the Atari one.
The triggers are wider.
I don't know if I like that as well. To be fair,
I mean, to be honest, it's a great. I find them a great fit. The D-pad is actually really nice. The D-pad has a little bit of rotating. It doesn't spin, but it has. I can rock on it, which is what I like about the Xbox Series X D-pad versus the older Xbox D-pads. I can actually rock my finger on this, which is really nice. The sticks do.
I find that D-pad looks a little janky to me. And I even find the recessed one because I've got the Xbox Elite controller. And while it's a really good controller, I might have it around here somewhere.
Yeah.
I find that recess thing. I was hoping that would be a great solution for a more modern D-pad, and it's not.
It's
okay, but it's not like an NES and SNES D-pad. It doesn't work nearly as well.
I do have a question about since it does come with that controller. What is the most powerful or in-depth or modern game you can play on the VCS? Like what will it run up to? Like a PS4 level game or?
Oh, it's got. Well, I mean, it has. It's basically a mini PC. So it has a Ryzen AMD processor in it, and it has. It's an APU, so it has the Vega graphic chip on board. It's got an 8 gig graphic, 8 gigs of RAM, shared graphics RAM. I would say it probably could run some PS4 stuff. It's certainly not as.
What's the most powerful game you've played on it, though? Have you really put it through its paces to see what it will run without any kind of frame issues or anything?
Natively or say through Windows.
Oh, well, I guess I don't know how it works then. So I just
it's got its own OS, but you can side load anything you want to on it. Essentially, they sold it under the premise of it's a mini computer, but it has its own OS loaded onto it,
which is basically a Linux kernel.
Right, that runs all the VCS native stuff, right?
Right.
So you have that, but you can sideload like another Linux instance, a Windows instance. You can completely wipe it and put Windows on it because it's essentially just a PC.
Yep.
It's just an inexpensive PC.
You can add RAM to it, or you could put an M2 SSD drive in it. I would say, yeah, I mean, it plays it. I think if you dropped another 8 gigs of RAM in it, I think it would probably place, I guarantee you it would play.
3.
I bet it could in a low res mode. It could definitely play Fortnite and shit like that. It's not gonna run your Xbox Series X and PS5 stuff, but
I'm pretty sure I've seen it running Fortnite, but but it doesn't run it at a really high fidelity, and Fortnite almost runs on toasters these days. Right. So because they want it to run on everything.
Or what you do is you run. It's got it's got all the cloud streaming apps on it. Xbox Cloud Gaming, Stadia Luna, GeForce
Ant Farms on there.
Ant Farms on there. Ant Stream Arcade is on there. So I mean, it's a hard question to answer because really the games that are on there now are all the Atari recharged games, and then there's a couple of indie titles on there, and then of course the 2600 and 7800 games. So I don't know that anybody has put anything on it yet that's put it through any pace.
Yeah, I don't know that they've actually gotten an exclusive that pushes the hardware limitations for what they've got.
Yeah, I can't.
I mean, it's a really flexible piece of kit for what it is. The problem is if you already have like a PC or like a laptop or something like that, you've kind of got the equivalent of spec of what they put into this thing for what the original asking price of $400. Now, if you can get it sub 400, like I think I've seen it as low as like 278 a couple times. Before the one huge drop to 99. At 99, it's a no-brainer. If you can find one at 99, I think it's like an easy sell. Because if nothing else, you can make it another small PC that you can just hook to your TV, and you can load whatever the heck you want to load on and do it that way.
Well, and what Pack Opening Pro told me, which kind of changed my mind, I was going to buy a lot of those recharged games, on the Xbox. And I mean, obviously, we've got Missile Command and stuff coming out on Amigo, so we'll have that version. But I was going to get a lot of the recharged games on the Xbox until Pete told me that the recharged games on the VCS have
extra stages, don't they?
Extra stages and stuff that is exclusive to the VCS. So I'm like, well, crap, I'm going to play it on the VCS now.
Yeah.
So it does make it easy to make that call. So, I don't know that I would have I would definitely not have bought it at full price.
I don't think it's worth 400. At 278, it's far more tempting. At 99, it was a no-brainer. I just didn't pull the trigger on it fast enough and missed the window. Because at 99, I'm like, well, hell, when I get home, I'll just buy one, and they were gone. They flew off the shelves at that point. So it was absolutely a no-brainer because it came with 2 controllers as well, and the value of those controllers alone is worth more than the $99. I absolutely agree.
I
think Amazon still has a few for sale. I was looking to see if I could find some of them like price-wise for sale, and they're kind of like up and around, but I don't know many of the places that have them for sale for cheap. So I don't know if I trust those. Like Amazon, I would trust, and they have that at $278 right now. $289 is the current price, actually. That comes with both of the controllers and the console. It's not the wood grain, it's the straight onyx, which is not necessarily bad. I don't think that's bad for that.
Not a bad looking game.
If I could find it, I'm still looking to see if I can get it cheaper. Because if I could get it cheaper, I'd rather have it cheaper.
For sure.
Stampede Gaming has a relevant question. It counts as a first loop no death run. It does not count as a full no death run.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ghosts and Goblins is one of those games where it's just like the 2 loops is what it's really called. GameStop was selling them for $99 and they sold out.
If you only die a couple times in that second loop.
I've never tried to do both loops of any Ghost and Goblins. I can't even make it through the first loop. I just haven't put the time in.
He published a video today where he ran through Ghosts and Goblins, and he got all the way to the end of the second loop, and then the game was super trolly, so it got him at the end. and kind of stole the full no death run away from him. But it was a solid run. So everyone go check out that channel. He's salty about it, but that was a great run. So
it's dude, Stampede, I feel for you, man. That game is that game's mean.
it plays very rough.
That game's just mean, dude.
You know how when you're like petting a kitten, you just want to be nice, but then it turns around and like sinks all 5.
It strikes you with all its hatred of like 2 seconds,
all
and
5
it's like,
pointy ends
oh, it's
dig into
you.
your
I
arm.
love you.
That's what Ghost of Goblins is like.
Yeah, pretty much. Entirety of it. I think the Genesis ones and the Super Nintendo ones are still hard, but I feel like they're much better than the original one as far as like control and accessibility. As far as the most accessible one, that's probably the Switch one, because of the difficulty levels and on top of that, endless continues, so that makes it more accessible than it's ever been, and it's still pretty brutally hard. It's just a hard series, man.
Yeah, Brian was asking, what emulation wise, what does it handle?
I think you ran all the way up to PS2, didn't you?
I did, and it
Dreamcast as well.
I did not try the Dreamcast yet. I probably should do one just to put it through its paces. I did run Panzer Dragoon on the Saturn emulators to see how that looked.
If it'll run Saturn, it'll probably run PS2 and Dreamcast.
It runs
Dreamcast
PS2.
was close to the same era as PS2 graphically, so it'll probably be okay with PS2.
Yeah. There are some games that have some audio glitching in it, where you hear a little. The biggest issue I have with the PS2, which I also have with the Jaguar emulator, is you hear some audio popping.
And Carla is shocked and disappointed that you haven't tried Dreamcast
yet. Because I play those games on real hardware. I didn't think about it to think about what the emulation would be like. The only time I really emulate Dreamcast is if I do it on my phone. So you know what? I will add, since I haven't started really putting that video together yet, I will go back and freaking get behind my entertainment center and hook the damn thing back up to do it. Just for you, Carla, because I love you.
VCS.
Typing it a dead would probably work because you can use any. You
should be able to connect almost any keyboard to that thing and get it running,
which I do. So, and vice versa, you could connect these to your PC. So like all this stuff is all interchangeable.
See, I thought about getting one of those Atari controllers specifically because if I wanted to get into 2600 emulation, that seems like a good option.
Yes.
Because it would feel more like playing on an Atari with that.
What I found, and I don't know if it was maybe because of when it was developed, I thought, hey, Pete, I actually was just talking.
Hey, Pete.
Twitter for the win. I was just actually talking about you, Pete. You gave me the heads up about the VCS versions of those games.
Carla's all happy. You made Carla's day.
Well, I do. Carla, my sister Carla, and we are kindred. We are kindred Dreamcast spirits. The one interesting thing, and I did make note of this in my video as well, is their decision to use USB micro instead of USB-C for their input, for their USB.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good move because then you can use any USB-C compatible cable with it, as opposed to having to have some sort of weird connector. And using micro USB or any of those now just seems kind of annoying.
No, it is micro. That's what I'm saying. It is micro.
I thought you said it's USB-C.
No, it's not. I'm saying it's the decision not to use USB-C was interesting. It uses the old. Dumb. It uses the old micro. But
I wonder if that's because it was cheaper. Because it's an older tech.
I'm wondering that too. And if when it was developed, when it was first in development, USB-C wasn't really there yet. Now, here's the thing, though. What I like about this is the way that they slotted the USB micro cables that came with it.
You said slot.
I know. Wait. I'm going to use another word. They fit so snug in the port. Like it feels. That's the one thing that I thought was quality feel, was how those cables went into the plug.
Yeah, I like it when they recess those, because sometimes you have a little bit of the exposed connector.
Yeah,
when you have that recess plug in, it makes everything look clean. It makes it look cleaner.
The recess.
So I prefer it when they do that. Yeah, but I prefer that with USB-C too, just because it makes things look a little cleaner.
No, I mean, USB-C is the way to go. It is what, obviously the Series X controllers and
it's the more modern standard. I believe
PS5
PlayStation 5 does it.
Right.
The Series controllers use it. All the 8-bit controllers use it now. I've still got a bunch of stuff that uses the micro, and I still have those around.
I've got a ton of micro cables around, so it's not a terribly big deal. It's not like it's a game breaker for me in any way. Get this man a custom.
Sublimination is like that is its own mystique game.
Love you too, Rab. No, I mean, I'm going to be diving a lot. I spent all this time trying to get the emulation and stuff to work, because that's the primary reason that I had the VCS. But again, thanks to Pack Opening Pro Pete, I'm going to start playing the recharged games on there too. And
and they've got a couple of neat exclusives on there too, I think. I know there was one game that Pete was playing. I can't even remember the name of it. It was like it was a little ninja style or samurai style game that looked kind of cool.
Oh yeah, right.
But I think it only been on there, and then there's a couple of others that are exclusives on there. Sean would know if he was in here, but I don't think Sean comes to my channel very much. I was surprised he didn't show up when I did an Atari stream, because he's usually all over it to talk about the VCS, because it's like his favorite console. Has been for a while.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely doing it, Pete. You were the one that you definitely taught me that I needed to do that over getting them on the Xbox.
Yeah, if I had a VCS, I would be doing the recharge games there, not anywhere else, because I knew they had extra levels. That's definitely the way to play them for sure.
Yeah. There was another game that I was interested in, Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan, which actually had been developed for the ColecoVision. I remember when I went to that horrible Coleco Expo a couple years back. And but this game is made by CollectorVision, and I
do it, Stampede. They need a letter on that one. Sorry, we have a side conversation of like Ghosts and Goblins going on while you're talking about the VCS.
I see that, which has everything to do with Atari.
But we don't care if it has anything to do with Atari.
Oh, good. My wife, yeah.
That was a good suggestion. Write your congressman. You need to do something. Don't just do nothing. Don't give up.
That's right. That's right. Yes, Coleco Expo. It was what the hell year was
and
that?
While you're chewing out Capcom, tell them to bring back Darkstalkers too. Give them a strongly worded letter about that.
Coleco Expo was, when did that happen? That happened, maybe it was 2018? 2017. It was in 2017. It was the absolute worst convention ever. Worst.
And no one really saw the ColecoVision Chameleon because it's invisible, because it's Chameleon. Right. And it was appropriately named because it was one thing masquerading as another thing.
Right.
Yeah, there was no Chameleon launch.
I went
Let's be clear, the Chameleon was never launched.
Yeah. I went to the Coleco Expo, and I took Jacob with me, and it was the only good thing that came out of that day was I bought an OG Xbox for $35 there. Nobody showed up to this thing. They had some girl from a Nickelodeon show signing autographs that never signed an autograph because nobody lined up for her. Brett Weiss might have been there pimping his book.
I think that dude's like everywhere with his books. To be honest with you, he seems to do okay with those. I mean, I haven't bought his book. I've heard it's actually pretty good. I just haven't picked it up. Well, the ones he has, I've heard are all pretty good. I just haven't picked them up.
You got it. This is so sad. Let me see if I have, because I thought one of my NLG shows. Yes, one of the NLG shows I actually did. Yes, Sophie Reynolds was there.
I remember Sophie Reynolds.
Yes, she sat there. We watched. She sat there for 3 hours. Nobody walked up to the table to get an autograph. Tyler Bushnell was there, who is Nolan Bushnell's son. Nobody went in to see him, right? None of this. I mean, it was the worst. It was the absolute worst. When we got there, we pulled up to, hold on. Let me see if I can, let me throw this in the chat.
I mean, she's pretty, but I mean, I don't know what she was in. I'd have to pull up her IMDb because I mean, I'm seeing random pictures.
We did some kind of game thing called known to game, the Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Everything.
She's been in a decent amount of stuff. She was in LA's Finest, Prince of Persia.
Was she in Prince of Persia?
By the way, hi Rez, long time no see. How's it going?
What? Oh, Rez!
I was waiting for you guys to see him.
Wow, I haven't seen Rez on the channel forever. Dude, what's up? Good to see you, man. Aren't we late as hell for you, or is it just super early where you're
tomorrow? Maybe.
Yeah, it's got to be like tomorrow for him.
Yeah.
He's getting up for work.
Probably. I mean, I've seen him kind of lurking on a couple of channels here and there, off and on, but I've not seen him like show up too much. There, Jade's boobs. Let's see here. What is this? Are you gonna get me in trouble on YouTube? What are we doing here?
No. Oh no. This is.
Oh, that's a podcast you just linked me.
Yes, this was that expo.
Oh, okay.
This was sad. This was.
I don't know if I want to throw this on there because I don't really want to. Because they attacked me for the Frogger thing, and I had to argue that one.
There's no audio word. I mean, it's all us talking. There's no audio.
I did not watch Prince of Persia.
I watched Prince of Persia.
I did not go see it.
I thought it was great. I actually thought Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job.
No, hey, we're glad for anybody that lurks, hangs out, chats. You guys are all welcome, man. Like, we just love that you guys hang out. And even though it was taking a break for a couple of weeks, I'm like, I got to keep RetroRoots going because I kind of get like hostility from people when I don't do this show. Like, it's become a thing. Like, I get legit like hostility vibes, particularly from Carla. She's like, "Where's my RetroRoots?" And I'm like, sorry. She's kind of scary when she wants to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't mess around with her.
I forgot that he was in Cities. I love that movie. I need to go back and watch those. Both of those were pretty good.
Bubble Boy.
Yep, I popped in on 80 Consumers channel the other day and lurked a little bit. I think I had a couple things going on, but I hadn't popped into one of his streams at all, and so I wanted to hang out and chill out for a little while.
Yeah, he was, I guess, maybe 13.
Yeah, he could have been that old during that, because City Slickers are pretty old. That's like Billy Crystal's heyday.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was about my age when I saw the movie, so I think I was in 5th, 6th grade.
Yeah. So he could have been that old.
No,
well, we've been going for pretty much 2 hours, guys. We should probably start to wrap this one up because we've kind of gone off topic of Atari. Not that we started on topic with Atari, but you know.
When do we ever stay on topic?
I don't know. We will one day, actually. Kind of. Okay, probably not.
I think people would get upset if we did.
Maybe they might. That's fair. But I think you guys need to crash out. I'm gonna try to see if my wife is off her phone call. She's on call this week, so she got a call Ryza went in the stream, and I'm like, well, that's kind of perfect because I won't be talking to her anyway because I'll be on stream, and that way I don't feel quite as bad. Sucks, just like she's having to be on a call. So stay on target. Famous last words. We always we're like the one that like crashes onto the side and starts spinning off into space. That's kind of where we live.
Lit. I think Lit accidentally got a.
Oh, poor Scepter, man. He's got to wake up for 4 hours. Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for hanging out as long as you do, man. Oh, my God. I feel bad now. Holy crap.
All right. So what Lit said before Paste accidentally deleted his comment was Bubble Boy is the shit. So underrated. I agree.
I haven't seen Bubble Boy. It looked kind of funny.
God.
I just
That
never
looks like
saw it.
a star-studded movie. Dude, had oh my God, had everybody in that movie, including Danny
Video James for next stream is about boobs and breaking to get me in. Those usually enter into like conversation pretty regularly on the show, I'll be quite honest.
Had Danny Trejo in it.
Oh wow.
Sushi Kurtz.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was
that's one of those oddity movies
Vern
that nobody expects to
Troyer.
be good and somehow gets a huge a huge following for some reason.
Zach Galifianakis was in it.
Oh, Ib just popped in. Dude, Ib, you just popped in just about the time that we're about to shut down, man. It's good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Boobs and bacon, two of my favorite things.
We had talked about Atari at one point in this show.
Yeah, we did. We were talking about Atari.
What's that,
and then we got
Dyer?
distracted.
You came in right at the end too.
Hey,
Dyer's
Dyer.
in here.
That's probably
Wow,
Dyer's
everybody
fault.
pops in right at the tail end. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.
Howdy ho.
Goodbye, everybody.
Well, guys, we are going to wrap this one up for the night. I am sorry that there's like a couple of you that just popped in right as we're wrapping up, but we've been going for like 2 hours.
Yeah, come in early, folks.
So we normally start this. It's 8:30 Mountain Time. That's just for your local time zone. It's like 7:30 Pacific, 9:30 Central, and then like 10:30 Eastern. And past that, I cannot tell you. Once you start, particularly once you start going across the pond, that's just my brain does not factor those numbers well.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. You guys live in the future, and you've heard
awesome. Thank you, sir.
You heard this show before we said it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
it's cool,
dude, Dyer, the fact you popped in at all, man, is awesome. I'm not one to hate on anybody that pops into the show at any point. You pop in for 2 seconds just to say hi. You pop in, you hang out the whole show. That's awesome.
We have a Dyer. We have a guy on NLG who actually lives in the Netherlands, where Peter's from.
We live in the future, Marty.
Who, when we end at midnight, we wait for him before we shut down because he pops in the morning, his morning. So, Dyer, we're just teasing, man.
Yeah, there's absolutely no problem with anybody who pops in.
Totally
I know some of you guys have like time zones that totally do not sync with my time zone, which is honestly a lot of people, quite frankly. Because I'm in Mountain Time, which is weird for everybody. It's just a little bit off,
right?
Especially for anybody in Europe, it's just like anytime my stream is like the worst time ever because it's like 2:00 in the morning for them. It's like, ugh. But yeah, we'll be here in 2 weeks, man. If you guys can pop in. If you guys want to catch it on the replay, or if we really can't adjust the time. This was the time that worked the best for everybody that's on the panel currently. So that's about the best that we can usually do. So that means basically you're on Eastern time. So yeah, we'd start at like 10:30 your time. Basically, is when we usually start.
Yep, I'm not too far from you. I'm down in Maryland. Yep.
No. It's a specific time because it starts specifically. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, even if Robert and I are mid sentence.
Yes, I did today. I gave you warning, sir.
Yes, you said we're getting started, and then got started.
Oh, see, my normal streaming time for Rez was usually when he's on the treadmill, so I always had to stream until he got off the treadmill. It was required, so I could never end streams early when Rez was on treadmill Tom, because he popped in, he goes, "I'm on the treadmill," and I'm like, "All right, let me know when you're off. We can end the stream then." All right, guys. We are going to bounce. It has been 2 hours. Thank you guys so much for coming in and hanging out with us this week. We will be keeping this schedule. I'm thinking I will have regular content probably sometime near the end of June. That'll give me 2 or 3 weeks to kind of work through whatever I want to do with the channel. Figure out what I'm going to do here, what I'm going to do there, if I start up a second channel or not, because that's still kind of up in the air for me. Right now, the plan is to kind of keep everything on one channel unless something kind of changes my mind on it. If it does, I will be letting everybody know only in streams, because this will probably become the streaming channel. But I'll also be doing like a video on this channel and other notifications so that people are aware of what's going on. That way I can just kind of keep everybody in the loop, because I don't want people to wonder what the hell happened to uploads and this kind of stuff if I change that. But as of right now, it's going to be status quo. I just kind of want to make things nicer. I want to make it easier to manage. I want to come up with some new ideas, and I want to get some stuff written down and hopefully recorded. So when I come back, I'm a little bit ahead of the curve moving forward is the idea. So not go anywhere, just trying to get things more organized, I guess is the best way to put it. And then come back hopefully a little bit more refreshed, and so I can kind of push through the grind a little bit easier, because it becomes a little bit like stressful trying to do week to week to week to week to week, and then usually finishing things on Friday morning. I'd like to not do that if I could get away with it. So it's awesome to have all of you guys. Thank you so much, and until next time, happy gaming.
Night, everyone.
Play on, gamers.